order the City Council meeting for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for September 14th, 2020. If you would, we'll have the flag appear on the screen in a moment, and when it does, as you are able, if you would please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Janice Hoppy.
Present.
Judy Hutchinson.
Here.
Zachary Urban.
Present.
Rachel Hulteen.
Present.
Amanda Weaver.
Here.
Corey Stites.
Here.
Leah Dozman.
Here.
Valerie Nossler-Beck.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, the best city council on earth is all here.
Okay, thank you all, and thank you for being here. In your councilors, in your packet, you have the city council meeting minutes for the August the 24th, 2020. If there are no objections, we will let those stand as presented. Do I hear any objections to the minutes? Then we will let those stand as presented. We have reached our citizens' right to speak. Citizens may speak on any matter not on the agenda for a maximum of 3 minutes under citizens' right to speak. Citizens who wish to speak on a public hearing item or a decision, resolution, or motion may speak when that item comes up in the order of the meeting. We had no one sign up for speaking in the city council chambers tonight. So we will take your comments. If you would raise your hand on Zoom in the Zoom meeting format, which is an icon at the bottom of your screen. Ms. Scheck, our director tonight, will bring you into the meeting. So Ms. Scheck, do we have anyone wishing to speak tonight?
We do, Matt. To start off with just something a little bit different, I'd like to actually bring on screen members of the Arvada Fire Protection District to introduce their new chief, if that would be okay with you.
That is certainly fine. Please join us on the screen, and if you would please introduce yourself and give us your address, and then you may speak. And we generally have a 3-minute time period, and our Mayor Pro Tem is our timekeeper. So whenever you're ready.
So I can just start by saying I'll introduce Mr. Bob Loveridge, who's the Vice President, to begin. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Loveridge, please introduce yourself and then give us an address, and you may begin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Bob Loveridge, 9105 West 68th Avenue, Arvada, Colorado. I am currently the Vice President of the Arvada Fire Protection District. I was the president the last 4 years, though. So I've been at this for a bit, but we're proud to be here to introduce to you our new chiefs. We're a little bit tardy on this, as we appointed Mr. Mike Piper, our chief, on March 11th. But then a few things happened since then, and we got sidetracked a little bit. We apologize. We are very pleased to, as I said, introduce Mr. Piper as our chief. He's been as our deputy chief for the past 12 years, and a lot of fire experience, a lot of fire education and certifications, a lot of good education behind him, and we are so excited to have him on board. And then along with him, we've brought in Deputy Chief Kirk Locke. No, it is not. I don't think he's related to our quarterback, but he came to us from Memphis, Tennessee, where he was deputy chief there in the city of Memphis. He was over 54 stations, 30 years with them. He was Tennessee's task force team leader, which he went back to help them go into the hurricane in Houston recently. So we've got two fabulous chiefs here who are running the department. We're excited where we're going. A lot of new ideas, a lot of innovation of how we're approaching things that we do. And so I will turn the time to Chief Piper for anything he may wish to say, and then Chief Locke.
All right. Well, Chief Piper.
Good evening. I'll just keep it very brief. Some of you I know, some of you I'm being introduced to for the first time, but I look forward to continuing to work with the city of Wheat Ridge as we've done for very many years. Obviously, I know your city manager. We meet regularly, and your new police chief, who I think is terrific. And I think we are all a good collaborative team. And again, just looking forward to working together and serving the community of Wheat Ridge to the best of our capacity.
Thank you, Chief Piper. And do we have Deputy Chief Locke still on the line?
Like he just fell off, maybe.
Like he might have just fallen off at the wrong time. So anyway, Mr. Loveridge and Chief Piper, we're delighted to have you here with us tonight, Chief. We're excited to have you on board with the Arvada Fire Department. Certainly a great partner for Wheat Ridge, and we look forward to working closely together. So thank you all very much. Oh, I see we have Deputy Chief Locke back on the line. Mr. Locke, oh, there you are.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're go right ahead.
Nice to meet all of y'all. I know that I hadn't met any of y'all personally, but looking forward to meeting each and every one of you. And I love being in the area and love being in Colorado.
Okay, well, listen, thank you very much for coming to join us tonight. We appreciate the introduction. Look forward to working closely with you in the future. So if there's anything we can do, please let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Loveridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Scheck, do we have other speakers on our citizens' right to speak tonight? With their hands raised. If
I don't see anyone with their hands up, Mayor.
okay, if you would like to speak, I'll go do one more round. If you would like to speak, please go to the raise your hand function in the Zoom format, and we will arrange for you to be on screen. Okay, it looks like we have completed our citizens' right to speak. Thank you very much. And we will move now to our first agenda item. This is the consent agenda. Ms. Hutchinson, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a motion to approve payment to Insight Public Sector in the amount of $148,476.06 for the annual renewal of the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. The issue, the city's current 5-year Microsoft Enterprise Agreement expires on September 30th, 2020. This 5-year renewal includes an upgrade of the current on-premises license and software package to Office 365 and Teams, inclusive of implementation and support.
Thank you. And if you'd like to introduce item 1B, please.
Okay, thank you. This is a motion to award a contract to Design Mechanical, Inc. of Louisville, Colorado, in the amount of $115,651 for HVAC upgrades at the Wheat Ridge Recreation Center and City Hall, and approve a 3% contingency in the amount of $3,470 for unforeseen project expenses. Do you want the issue?
No, ma'am. Thank you. I think that's pretty explanatory. May I have a motion on consent agenda items number 1A and 1B, please?
Okay. I move to approve payment to Insight Public Sector in the amount of $148,476.06 for the annual renewal of the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. And the next one?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, thank you. I move to award a contract to Design Mechanical, Inc. of Louisville, Colorado, in the amount of $115,651 for HVAC upgrades at the Wheat Ridge Recreation Center and City Hall, and approve a 3% contingency in the amount of $3,470 for unforeseen project expenses.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Stites. This is the consent agenda. Will the clerk please poll the council? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand.
Mr. Mayor, the motions have passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will go to agenda item number 2. Ms. Nosler-Beck, would you please introduce this item?
Thanks, Mayor. Resolution number 45-2020, a resolution in support of an application for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Non-Motorized Trail Grant for a feasibility study and cost assessment for improvements to Tabor Lake. At issue, this resolution is to support the city's application for a Colorado Parks and Wildlife, CPW, non-motorized trail grant to fund a feasibility study and cost assessment for improvements to Tabor Lake. The grant has a maximum value of $45,000 and requires a 30% match if a combination of in-kind and cash funds, with at least 10% of the match being a cash match. The project must be completed within 2.5 years of being awarded the grant, which gives the city until July 2023 to utilize the grant funds.
Thank you. This is a resolution by the council. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this one?
We do have staff available. Karen O'Donnell, our Parks and Rec Director, and I think she has some staff here if you have any questions.
Okay, so we don't have any. Before we go to questions from council, I will open it up to questions from the public. If you would like to speak on this item, agenda item number 2, please raise your hand in the Zoom format on the screen, and we will recognize you and bring you forth to speak on this item. So if you would like to speak on agenda item number 2, this is the time. Ms. Scheck, do we see anyone wishing to speak on this item?
No, Mayor.
Okay, we will close our citizens' right to speak on this portion of this item and open it up to questions from council. We have Ms. O'Donnell here. Thank you for joining us. And any questions from council? Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you. If you could just let me know where Tabor Lake is that by Ward Road?
Sure. It's if you're going from 44th, that's the way I've accessed it before. Just past Prospect Park. I'm terrible with directions, so I don't know if somebody can say that better than I can. Zach might want to chime in too.
Probably just south of 44th Avenue.
And west of Prospect Park.
Yeah. Kind of just about lines up with Ward Road, south of Ward Road.
Okay. Thank you.
There's Mr. Lovato's with us. Any further questions on this item? Ms. Holteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The version that I have of the packet has a blank application in it. And I don't know if that came through, if there was actually information that was supposed to be in there and it didn't come through in the packet, or if that was just included so we could see what the application looked like. But I didn't see, in what I was able to download, I didn't see actually information about the proposed project.
Yeah, that was just included as a sample of what was completed. The proposal is actually very brief for the planning grants. They really just require an idea of what you're looking to do and then a map of the site. So it's like a 1.5 pager that was submitted with all of the information is here in the council action form.
Okay. Awesome. Well, good. Well, I'm excited that you guys are looking into this, and I definitely support it, and we'll keep my fingers crossed that you guys are awarded the grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, Ms. Nosler-Beck, may I have a motion on this item?
Sure. I move to approve resolution number 45-2020, a resolution in support of an application for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Non-Motorized Trail Grant for a feasibility study and cost assessment for improvements to Tabor Lake.
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Ms. Dozman. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Ms. Dozeman.
Sorry, I just wanted to thank the Parks and Rec Department. They had reached out to Counselor Knopfler-Beck and I to write a letter of support. So just look for that because it's due by Friday. So I just wanted to thank you for your efforts on applying for the grant. And I'm really excited to see some improvements to Tabor Lake.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand, and the clerk will please count the votes.
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. That concludes our regular portion of the meeting. We will go to City Manager's Matters. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a few updates this evening, probably more than the actual agenda. But some
Time
good
is ticking.
Yeah, I promise.
Okay.
I think there's Chief Murtha. We got Chief Murtha on. A couple, and then I think Ken Johnstone's still here too. So they can both chime in when we get to their items. But first of all, I'd like to thank Chief Murtha. He brought in this morning Omar Montgomery, who's president of the Aurora NAACP. He's also an adjunct instructor at the University of Colorado. He gave a presentation this morning to our supervisory team in the police department on race and equity issues, and a couple hours of talking and listening, and I think it went really well. Not sure if Chris has anything he wants to add to that, but
I just want to say that while the police department takes the current status of policing in America very seriously, we want to make sure that our officers are aware that we're not stopping to push forward on the issues that the community has brought to us, and we continue to do that. Mr. Montgomery is an excellent speaker and really an incredibly qualified person to have, and I think the feedback, so you know, Mr. Goff, after the meeting was really outstanding feedback on the conversations that he had with our officers, and certainly caused them to think about some of the issues that he raised that are current in the policing world right now. So we were really lucky to have him. We look forward to continuing our relationship, but this is just one more step towards trying to make ourselves a little better police department. So.
thank you, Chief. Then next Monday, as I think you all know, on our agenda, we have a bigger discussion about race and equity issues, and we'll bring forward some recommendations to City Council, asking for consensus, and also looking at giving you a summary of what other things we're doing as an organization right now to address the issues. So looking forward to that discussion next week. Another item I'd like to provide an update on is our neighborhood revitalization strategy program. Let's Talk Resident Engagement Program, we're calling it. You know, we had staff on a couple of weeks ago, I believe, to give you some updates, but we're ready to launch the program and want to just make sure you are aware of that. You know, at the last meeting when we presented this, we presented the program framework, including the factors we used to select the first round of neighborhoods. We also asked council for names of people staff should be talking to before launching the program this fall. So first of all, we have selected East Wheat Ridge and the Bel Air neighborhood as our first two neighborhoods to focus on based on the factors we shared with you back in June. So look for city staff presence in these neighborhoods for the next few months with this program. Second, we've had really good conversations with all the contacts that you gave us, and we'll be following up with a written summary of those conversations to you all later this week. Thirdly, we are moving forward with hiring of the neighborhood engagement specialist to support this work and other related efforts. And we have a final candidate, and we're working on the logistics of getting that person on board. And lastly, the program, Let's Talk Resident Engagement, is up and running on our What's Up Wheat Ridge pages. Both neighborhoods have their own page, and that will begin drawing people to starting this week. So we'll include more details to City Council in the next week or so about the program as it gets kicked off. So we do have Ken Johnstone on the line, I believe. Yeah, if you have any questions, or if Ken, if you have anything to add to that, is Jeff or
Patrick, I think you covered what we were hoping to get covered today. We're super excited to be launching. It's been a really fun process to, design this new program. We appreciate council's support in funding the positions that are going to make this possible. We're excited about the two people that were, Jeff, who's been on board since January, and the other candidate for the second position that we hope to have hired in the next 30 days, let's say. We think they'll both be a really good fit. I know. Thank you so much for all of your names. I think you all exceeded your 3-person allocation, which was awesome. I think Jeff, it was really invaluable to Jeff to really learn about the community and do a deep dive with a lot of diverse constituents. So we really appreciate you getting those names to us. And I know Jeff really appreciated how much intelligence it gives him on the community. Jeff has worked for the city twice before, actually, and we're pleased to have him back. But I think that really helped him get caught up to speed on where the community is now, and it really informs the process moving forward for him. So again, thank you for that.
Thanks, Ken. Any questions for Ken or Jeff on that? Val? And you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm on mute, and I think I have a question here, Ken or Patrick. I have, and I know we all have been getting a lot of emails and calls about homeless and the issues, especially near I-70 and Kipling. And I know we have the homeless navigator all in process, and that's moving forward. Will any of these new hires also be involved in any of our work in that space too? Because I know we're starting in East Bel Air, or in my hood in Bel Air, and it's one of the bigger issues that we have going on over here.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Ms. Nosler-Beck. We certainly are. We're trying, at the start of this process, we're really trying to tee up from the community on a really blank slate to some extent of what they identify to be the issues, and then be responsive to those in the best way that we can. So, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if that's an issue that we hear coming up when we start this outreach. But from a response standpoint, I think that any responses that we would have to those issues surrounding those matters would probably be addressed more so through that navigator position. But it'll be a helpful tool to better understand what the root issues or concerns with those types of issues are.
Right. Thanks. I just want to make sure the right hand's talking to the left on that. So appreciate it.
Ms. Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious what the city's doing to communicate with people in the neighborhoods. Are they doing direct mailing to all the households? How are they letting people in the neighborhoods know that this is going on and that their input and solicitation is important?
Well, we started over the weekend with a banner at Dumpster Days. So we're trying to be creative, certainly mailers, web presence, flyers, yard signs, but Jeff Hurt, our senior neighborhood planner, is on the call as well. So he might be able to speak to that more directly.
Yeah, Ken, you mentioned the kind of the high points, but yeah, we're calling them engagement blitzes in each neighborhood. So for the next about 3 months in Bel Air and East Wheat Ridge, like Ken said, we're doing a few rounds of engagement we're anticipating, but in terms of getting the word out, I think one big thing we're doing that's new is that we are getting a database of all owners and renters, which we didn't have before. So we're expanding our list of folks that become aware of things. That'll be a big step for us. So we'll do mailers that in this kind of early stage of the Blitz will draw people to the web page, and all and the follow-up email we send to council will have information on that on those web pages. But we do have an initial survey that we're pushing out right now. So for example, at the dumpster days, we had banners, but we also had, and I saw you there, Rachel, we had flyers that we handed out to draw folks to. We just have 10 questions. We're calling it 5 minutes for 10 questions. We're recognizing people don't have a lot of time. We're trying to keep it concise and focused. Anyway, so website mailers, yard signs, probably 2 rounds of mailers, and then intercept events. So the dumpster days is an example of an intercept event. Through our existing events going on in these areas, we're looking to have a presence there. And then going forward past this sort of prime the pump survey, launch round, we are going to start scheduling both in-person and virtual events for both neighborhoods, and having the content of those meetings really informed and driven by what we're hearing from folks now, and as we go forward in the next several weeks from the prime the pump survey and from these conversations we've been having. So long story short, we're hitting all the avenues we can in the COVID landscape, but we're definitely open to ideas for how to best reach people. That's one of the reasons why we asked for names from council, was to have that more sort of personal connection with folks. And so we are using conversations with those folks to hopefully be sort of a conduit into the neighborhood through word of mouth as well. So trying to come from all angles, but definitely open to ideas.
Great, thank you. I'm impressed with how thorough that is. And I'm really happy to hear that there's 2 rounds of mailers, because it's a great way of reaching people. So thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions, Ms. Hutchinson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I want to just ask Jeff, when I believe I remember when the discussion was about the different neighborhoods, East Wheat Ridge was divided in 2. So you're talking 3 neighborhoods then. Is that right?
No, so yeah, sorry for the confusion. We did divide it in 2 for a number of reasons, population distribution being a big one of them. But when we say East Wheat Ridge, it reflects the broken up version, basically. So north of 32nd to 44th, and then between Wadsworth and Sheridan, essentially, as opposed to Southeast Wheat Ridge is the part we sort of broke off, quote unquote, which would be the area south of 32nd between Wadsworth and Sheridan. If that makes sense.
Not really. So I'm just, if you could clarify that again, East Wheat Ridge is from 44th to where?
Yeah, and I'm happy to pull up a map here if it'd be helpful, but and we'll certainly share the boundaries when we follow up with you this week. But just verbally describing it, so going from north to south, it would be from 32nd Avenue north to 44th Avenue, recognizing that the boundaries jog around Mountain View, and then from Wadsworth going to Sheridan. So it would be that portion of East Wheat Ridge that excludes Southeast Wheat Ridge and excludes Lepla Manor north of 44th.
Yeah, so why does it exclude Southeast Wheat Ridge?
Yeah, so that was
26 to 32nd is District 1.
Yeah, so that would be Southeast Wheat Ridge under this framework we shared with you back in June. So we're sticking to that same map and framework we shared with you, and the reasons track with what we tried to, we hopefully communicated at the time, which related to one of the big ones was population distribution. So when we ran the numbers looking at population by these sub areas, we saw that I think it was around 40% of the entire city's population was in East Wheat Ridge as defined by the NRS. And so we thought we wanted to spread things out a little bit more in sort of the spirit of spreading things around equitably around the city, 1, but then 2, having a more manageable focus for the geography of the engagement. So we could not be tackling almost half the city's population in one swoop.
Are you going to be addressing all of the areas or just part of some areas?
Yeah, so the focus of the program is for the residents. So it'd be so our focus, we're thinking and we're open to whatever direction it goes, is to be on the residential areas entirely within the boundaries of, say, East Wheat Ridge and Bel Air.
There's a lot of people who live between 26th and 32nd in Wheat Ridge, east of Wadsworth. Just as FYI, I'm not sure they would like to be left out.
Well, Jeff, maybe you could share the time frame for when you think we'll get coverage of the entire city and all the different neighborhoods.
Yeah, so I mean, this is part of the challenge is we would like to have, the resources to focus on every neighborhood simultaneously. But so we have 10 neighborhoods. And first of all, we're not trying to define neighborhoods. It's just breaking down the city into more manageable chunks so that we can focus more on neighborhood issues. But 10 neighborhoods and 2 neighborhoods at a time per blitz, as we're calling it. So that would be about 2-year cycles that we would cover the entire city. But I would anticipate, Southeast Wheat Ridge, for example, sooner than later, I would say, in that time frame.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hurt.
Thank you, Ken and Jeff. I have one more update. And Councilmember Mouse Beck kind of set me up for this, homelessness issues. We realize you've all been receiving emails and calls, I'm sure, about homeless issues throughout Wheat Ridge. And, we've addressed this with council several different times and tried to give you some background information. And but we want to give you some updates on what we've been doing recently. We still have several constraints on us as a city to address this issue fully, COVID being one of them, constitutional issues, jail capacity, et cetera. But, there's certain areas that we have more control over and where the city can be more proactive. We've created a city task force that includes employees from several different departments. This isn't a policing issue only. It's not really a policing issue. It's part of it, but we got Parks and Rec involved and Public Works. So we're going to meet on a regular basis to make sure that we're all working together and moving in the same direction and staying on top of these issues. We're currently really focusing on 2 major initiatives to focus primarily on the I-70 Kipling area and 38th and Wadsworth too. Those are the 2 areas that we're kind of hearing most complaints about. Not that we won't address other areas, of course, in the city, but those are 2 of the prime areas that we're really getting a lot of attention and conflict on. And so we're really focusing on those. And the program is what I'd really like to call a strategic surge. We're going to put a lot of resources into these 2 areas to try to address what we can address and what's under our control. There's been some major cleanups already over the last few days, in especially the I-70 Kipling area. PD has been working with the business community in those areas, providing education to them, asking them not to feed and provide restroom facilities for these folks. It's not helping the issue. We get it. It's altruistic. You want to help as much as you can, but it's not helping us solve some of these issues. The PD's been getting authorities to issue trespass on these folks from the businesses so that our police officers can do trespass notices. Unfortunately, those just move those folks to a different location usually, because if they even do have a warrant, the jail's not taking most of those folks. We're having a lot of trees trimmed. Private properties are having a lot of trees trimmed to mitigate and remove dense foliage so that there's less areas for camping sites. Private property, there's a good mixture up in I-70 Kipling area of private, CDOT and city properties. So it comes down to who's kind of responsible for that area. But the private sector has been working really well with us, and they understand that they need to make some changes maybe to their properties to help out. They're putting up fences to block access. They're cutting trees again, so there's less places for camping. Some private properties have been cited recently to clean up their properties that are littered. We've had city crews doing cleanings, and we're looking at actually hiring a outside contractor to help us so that we have a more consistent cleaning schedule for these areas, especially when there's biohazards involved. Our staff isn't necessarily trained or equipped to deal with some of the more serious biohazard areas with needles and bodily fluids and other things like that. Our staff does deal with some small cleanups, and we're going to provide additional training to make sure that they are trained on what to do and not to do in those areas. So those are a lot of things we are doing right now, and I'm going to let the chief speak up here in a minute too on what his department's been doing. But a few other things that we're working on too, both locally and regionally. As somebody mentioned, the navigator, homeless navigator, that position for Wheat Ridge and Golden Edgewater is out on the street. It's out for another 2 weeks. So hopefully we'll have that position hired very soon. The city attorney and I are reviewing a few ordinances that the city of Arvada has shared with us that they've put in place to deal with some homelessness issues. Not sure if how far they're pushing the envelope or if some of these ordinances may be pushing the constitutionality issues, but we'll take a look at them and bring them back if we feel those are right for Wheat Ridge. There's really a big focus right now across the county to focus all of the regional efforts to deal with homelessness through the Heading Home Committee, which has been set up for quite some time through the county. And Kelly, our new Jefferson County homeless coordinator, heads up that committee. And they're trying to make sure that we're all working together and moving in the same direction. And so we're really trying to focus all regional efforts through that committee. There's actually been some discussions with elected officials across the county also of finding the money and potential a hotel or two across the county to purchase to be used for regional, either temporary or permanent sheltering or low-income affordable housing in the future. So there's a lot of regional efforts going on still. We're trying to address what we think we can address locally. And at this point, it's mostly cleanup. But as I mentioned earlier, we're also looking at 38th and Watts area. And the police department is scheduling a meeting with all the businesses in that area to form a partnership to deal with issues in that corridor too. So I will turn it over to the chief now. He's still on, yes, and let him provide some input. We had a meeting just today on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will just add, Patrick covered it pretty well. We have an overtime program that focuses in the area around I-70 and Kipling right now. That doesn't mean we don't move it from time to time if we have need, but right now that program focuses on interacting with businesses and trying to solve problems. I'm not going to rehash all the issues that we're up against as far as providing services or, the jail space issues that we've come up against, but we are working hard to try and give a better appearance to the city. So from the PD side, we're working to identify those issues and work with our partners to help clean up. So we don't, the human part of it is one aspect, and then the trash part is another. So we're working with the other city agencies and some of our partners to try and coordinate that. We're also working with Arvada. But one of the issues I think that we're really facing is this idea that jurisdictions are all acting independently and they're all starting to hear the same level of complaints that many of you are hearing, which is causing them to take action. Denver took action on their homeless camps and closed them down with the idea that they were going to centralize some services in space. That never really materialized. So now those folks have been displaced, are just trying to find new spaces to go to. Arvada, as Patrick alluded to, has come out with some pretty restrictive ordinances around charitable solicitations at intersections and whatnot. And again, those folks are finding places where they can conduct their solicitation. And sometimes that's in Wheat Ridge. And we've seen in the last 2.5 months a real increase, certainly in the number of complaints, but also in a number of the homeless persons experiencing homelessness in Wheat Ridge. We have hired our two park rangers. We normally do that at the beginning of the summer, but with budget cuts being what they were, and we weren't sure if we were going to be able to survive, we put that off. Now we have 2 park rangers. They'll be full-time patrolling our parks, looking for opportunities to interact with our homeless population there. We're really geared up towards trying to create these alliances between our business partners, as Patrick alluded to, around 38th and Upham and the Safeway, to try and have a cohesive group of people who are all doing the same, all thinking the same way when they deal with issues around homelessness. So we are certainly trying every other opportunity we can. Some of the environmental design issues, some of the crime prevention through environmental design, such as removing the trees and the shrubs, will give us an opportunity to find folks who are out in the evening, potentially some lighting, extra additional lighting in areas where folks tend to congregate or go in the evenings. What I get generally for complaints really fall into 3 categories. One is that it's unsightly and unsafe. 2, that they're creating trash, and 3, that there's crime. I've told you about what we can and can't do. Where there's crime, we'll always respond, we'll always try, but it's very difficult for the level of crime that's being committed. Persons experiencing homelessness have every right to exist. So when people say it's unsightly or they feel unsafe, we have to question that to the next level. What about it is unsafe? Is there a behavior there that we can act on? And if there isn't, we're limited by the new Senate bill, which does not allow contacts unless under certain circumstances. So there are hurdles, but we do want to be a place that people can turn for answers, and we're trying to do that. It's just the issues are mounting, and we're trying to deal with them as they come in. So we are being proactive, and we are spending money in those areas, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has them of the police department specifically.
Thank you. I know Ms. Dozman had her hand up. Ms. Dozman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this is more appropriate for Mr. Dahl or the police department, but I've been concerned about people, and I understand panhandling is a constitutional right, but I'm concerned about people in the medians of busy streets. And I know some municipalities have passed ordinances against pedestrians in general in the medians. So I don't know if that's something that we can maybe look into. But that I-70 and Kipling area, you see people in the corners, but then you also see people sometimes in the medians, and they're stumbling, and you're kind of concerned about them potentially falling into the street. And so that's definitely a concern of mine. And so I just wanted to ask if that's kind of a way that we can turn towards, or if that's still in a gray area.
So before Mr. Dahl answers, I'm sure he'll have a smarter answer than I do. So I'll save him for cleanup. Right. But that was one of what Mr. Goff referred to as some of the I think some of the ordinance we're looking into. I know if you go to Colorado Springs, they post that no solicitation in the median. In Arvada, they passed an ordinance, but in the body of the ordinance, they refer to traffic safety issues. We would have a hard time demonstrating that we've had any collisions between pedestrians, and inherently we know that that's an unsafe place to be. The question is, would it withstand a legal challenge? And with that, I'll leave it to our expert in legal challenges, Mr. Dahl.
Thank you for that, Chief. You're absolutely right, both of you, that is both an arena in which there's been a fair amount of ordinance activity, and also in which there's been a fair amount of litigation around the ability to conduct a solicitation. And are you regulating speech, which is the requesting donations is speech, in which case there's a real limit on what you can do, or are you regulating the conduct where you have a broader ability to act. Years ago, the city had an ordinance that restricted selling newspapers, because back when newspapers got sold on medians, and room filled up with folks in the Press Association, actually. Today, however, there's the chief is absolutely right. The Arvada ordinances address this. Ordinances across the country do. There's some recent case law that I'm going to bring to bear on the Arvada model and look at it out of, I think, Utah most recently. And there's no federal law, but there's a lot of state cases. And the distinction there that they were able to defend was a distinction between medians that are simply too narrow and too unsafe, that are not designed for pedestrians to be on at all, versus medians that are designed for better for worse to be a traffic island refuge where you can stop halfway before you cross the rest of the way. And they were able to make that distinction after a fair amount of surveying of all of the medians in their city, and they backed it up with some data. Maybe that we'll need to do that, but one of the things I think we'll probably do, armed with the various forms of ordinances, distill those down into some options for council and to give you what I believe, working with the chief and Mr. Goff, are kind of the risk analysis of the options in terms of litigation. And hopefully there will be some in there that have an acceptable level of risk from a litigation standpoint for the city, that also have some impact, because you don't want to go through all of that effort and end up just being able to restrict on so few medians that it's pointless. And it's a real trick, but long answer to your question, but that's, I think, the work we'll have to go through to bring forward to council things that are legitimate choices for you, social policy choices for you to make.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Chief Murtha on this item? Or looks not. Mr. Goff, continue on your list.
That's it for me this evening. Thank you.
Oh, that was it. Okay. Good. That wasn't too bad. Then we will go to our city attorney, Mr. Dahl.
I actually have one item that I'd like to ask the council for permission to put on a study session upcoming. For many years, we've had a Fair Campaign Practices Act in Colorado that governs how political campaigns may garner money and how you organize your campaign committee and where you make your campaign finance reports. And for many years, and that statute also restricts government spending of money on campaign matters. You're more familiar with that because about every election year I mentioned that the city, of course, can't be spending its own money to urge voters to vote for or against a measure. Within the last couple of years, the rule has always been that both the finance reports get made to the city clerk, but campaign finance complaints for violations of that law are sent to the Secretary of State, who processes those. The Secretary of State has never really liked, I think, having to deal with municipal campaign finance complaints and to appoint hearing officers to hear those matters, but the Secretary of State always has. In 2019, the legislature passed a statute saying that municipal campaign finance matters, complaints on them, would go to the local city clerk. Reporting still goes to the clerk, always has gone to the local city clerk, reporting of how much people have raised, et cetera. But the statute migrated municipal campaign finance complaints to the city clerk. There was a fair amount of debate locally whether that would apply to home rule cities. And the Secretary of State just last Thursday, issued a rule after some rulemaking defining what municipal campaign finance complaints were pretty broadly and saying those go to the local municipal clerk. So the net of all this is that cities are beginning now to adopt local ordinances to put in place at least a minimum procedure for hearing and dealing with municipal campaign finance reports, because they haven't had to. Yeah, so went to Secretary of State, went to hearing officer, took care of all that at that level. While there is still, and I've spoken with CML, there's still a reasonable argument that if you're a home rule city, perhaps you can get around that. I think that argument's starting to fade because it's a state statute, Secretary of State's on board. And even though elections are a local and municipal matter, it's kind of hard for the home rule city to argue, well, elections are a local and municipal matter, but we think the campaign finance violations of a local election should be heard by the Secretary of State, despite the fact the Secretary of State has a statute and a rule saying they shouldn't. So there's that. The next municipal election for officials in the city is not, of course, until a year from this coming November. But nevertheless, what I would like to do, as many cities are writing ordinances now, and we've done so for a number of the other clients at my firm, they're not that difficult to write, and to set up a local system that is pretty easy to administer, relying on hearing officers, usually if there are complaints, to serve on behalf of the city clerk to hear those complaints. I'd like to be able to detail this in a little more comprehensively, give you an example ordinance at a study session. That'll be a good context for us to actually have the conversation. But I wanted to alert you to it, get your permission to bring this forward to a study session and get guidance from you on a draft ordinance, which then can go into the adoption process.
Thank you. Ms. Hobby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll support this, and if one other counselor wants to just put their hand up, I'll get you on the list. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like we have consensus to move forward with that, Mr. Dahl.
Very good. Thank you. I will do that. You'll see it probably not your next study session, but soon.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. We will go to elected officials matters and start with our clerk, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
I do have one report this evening. This afternoon, about 3 hours ago, Mr. Figlis and Ms. Luthwaite came to the city clerk's office to turn in the amended petitions circulated by their group to reverse ordinance 1691, the change in zoning at 38th Avenue and Johnson. We gave them a receipt for a total of 61 sections. I know you have 100 questions about who signed it, et cetera, et cetera. We don't know yet because in the 3 hours we've had them, we haven't had a chance to start reviewing the signatures. The good news is that 1 week from today is the deadline for the clerk's office to issue a final certificate of sufficiency or insufficiency to the petitioners. So a week from now, I'll be in a position to tell you exactly where we stand and what the next steps are or are not. Are there any questions for now? Mr. Mayor, that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. I see that we have our treasurer, Mr. Miller, on the line with us. Mr. Miller, would you like to provide any information?
Mr. Mayor, no, I don't have any updates for the council this evening.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for joining us. We will go to our city council councilors and start with Ms. Nosler-Beck.
I'm keeping it short. Go Broncos.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nosler-Beck. We'll go to Ms. Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually do have one announcement on September 19th, this upcoming Saturday. We have a cleanup on the I-70 in Kipling area, so it really kind of fits into what we've been discussing this evening. So we're going to meet at the Old Village Inn parking lot. So that'll be our staging area and also where Parks and Rec has offered to pick up any trash that we gather. And we're going to start at 10 a.m. and go until about 11:30. So you're encouraged to bring your own gloves, masks, and social distancing will be respected. And we hope that many in the community will come and help us pick up that area, especially over by our sign on Taco Bell and the four corners of I-70 and Kipling. So I will be there if you would like to join me.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dozeman. Mr. Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a great time Saturday working with Local Works down at Anderson Park. We were running the kids events and the kids festivities down there. The Deconstructed Ridge Fest seemed like it went off pretty well. So hopefully everybody enjoyed that took part in it. But so thank you for everybody who did that. And thank you for Local Works. And last thing I'll say is just take care of your neighbors and help them out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Miss Weaver.
Just following up on what Mr. Stites was just talking about, I just thought it was a great weekend and attended several of the events and helped with others. And just thank you to everybody who came out, and thanks to Local Works. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Holteen.
Thank you. I just want to give a shout out to my own neighbors. There were several neighbors walking around with chainsaws this week to help with down branches. And then I also want to thank the city for their quick response. I know that they were collecting branches out of the right of way pretty quickly. So I guess winter is coming and everybody is responding, but I was reminded of Wheat Rich's generous neighborly spirit. So thank you everyone for your participation.
Thank you, Ms. Holteen. Mr. Urban.
Nothing tonight. Go Broncos.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Urban. Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I did see the chalk art over there at Founders Park, and it's very nice. I really like that. And I'm very glad that the early short winter is over. For now. Yes, too much temperature difference. And go Broncos. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing tonight.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for a very nice, good, productive meeting tonight. I would like to also thank Local Works and the city and the staff that worked on the Ridge Fest. I went to Chalk Art, thought it was a really great afternoon. We were fortunate to have music at West 29th and had maybe our best Sunday night in a long time. So I want to thank, and those are the kind of things, and I know that there were other things around the area, and hopefully everybody got a look at them and had a great time. I want to thank Mr. Loveridge and Chief Piper and Deputy Chief Locke for coming tonight and introducing themselves with Arvada Fire. I always want to thank Chief Murtha for being on our call. He's a very critical, obviously vital part of our community. We appreciate you being with us tonight. I want to thank all of our citizens who are really working together hard, I think, to keep us all safe. And, everybody's got kind of that number, and I think are really taking it to heart. And I want to thank you all very much. With that, we have no more business. We will be back here next week in study session. And I look forward to seeing everybody there. Have a safe and productive week. So thank you all for being here. And we will stand. Oh, Ms. Dozeman. Okay.
Sorry, you're good.
What's that?
I waved too soon. You're good.
You waved too soon. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we can get a little wave. We're adjourned. Thank you.